welcome. As I said, we're going to be practicing every morning. This morning you'll need pillows or blankets for a yin, kind of modified yin practice. I kind of mixed it up with a few warm-ups this morning. So we'll go ahead and just get started. I'm going to move my chair over here. And feel free to either keep your video on or off. Doesn't really matter to me. Okay. I think you all can see me. Okay, so we're going to get started in a seated position on your mat. You can sit on a block if you need to, whatever feels best for your body. You know your body. And let's just pause here, gaze down, close the eyes. Palms can face down on your knees for more of a grounding practice, or you can place your palms up to engage with your higher power and invite more energy into your body. For anxiety practices, I usually start with some type of grounding practice. And so that's what I'll walk you through. Really just orienting our body and ourselves to the present moment and to the earth. So notice your sit bones, your feet, your legs. Notice them as they sink down into the ground. On your exhales, release any tension, tightness in your body. See if you can melt that away as it flows down into the earth. Bring your hands up to heart center. Pause here. Breathe in as you gently press those thumbs into the sternum, feeling that pressure, feeling the connection between you and your heart center. This practice is for you, and it's always a tool for you to come back to the present moment, to yourself. Your next inhale, you can keep your eyes closed, you can open them. We're going to take some neck circles, neck stretches really. So we'll sit up straight, spine lengthening up through the crown of your head. And we'll take your right ear over to your right shoulder. And as you do this, think about pressing your chin back a little bit more into your neck so that you're lengthening out straight through the spine and leaning over. Instead, some people tend to put their chin up and out over to an angle, and that actually strains the neck a little bit more. So let's bring your right ear over to your right shoulder. And if you want, you can bring your right hand over to the left side of your head and gently apply some pressure there to lengthen out. And when we are using this and toning the vagus nerves, which is what we'll talk about, we generally stay here for about 30 seconds. And come back up to center. Now we're going to take the chin over to the right. Look over your right shoulder. And again, lengthen up out the spine, up to the crown of your head. And look down towards your right shoulder, your right armpit. That way we're getting into the side of the neck in a trap. And again, you can apply some pressure with your right hand if you'd like. Think about lengthening up through the neck, through the spine. Continuing to press that chin back towards your neck. And release, come back to center. Now we're going to take the other side, left ear to left shoulder. Again, pressing that chin back to your neck and leaning it over. You can bring your left arm, left hand to the right side of your head. And come back to center. Now we're going to turn your gaze all the way over to the left and look down into that left armpit, getting the side of your trap. Inhale, release, come back to center. And you can switch your legs if you'd like. And just take a few hip circles here. Ground down your sit bones into the earth and start to circle over to the left. Bringing some movement, some energy into our hips this morning. The same as along as we ground down into the earth as well. And switch sides, go to the other side. Lengthening out through that spine, maybe taking gentle, almost cat-cows as you do this as well. Feel into your body and feel whatever movement is best for you. And back to center. I'm going to take some gentle twists. So bring your left hand over to your right knee, right hand behind you, and lengthen up, twist from the torso, look over your right shoulder. And breathe here. Lengthen out a little bit more from that torso and the core. And come back to center, take the opposite side. Right hand over left knee, left arm behind you. Lengthen out and twist through that abdomen, through that core. And remember to breathe here. And come back to center. Now we're going to take Supta Baddha Konasana. You can bring your heels in as close as you want to your core, or you can bring them out for more of a hip stretch, whatever is better for you this morning. And we're also going to take a prop. So maybe a pillow, a couple pillows, bolster, whatever is best for you. So you can go in between your legs. And actually, I'm going to get a couple. Okay. I'm not at my normal home today, so I have a few different options. Okay, so we're going to take a supported forward fold here. So you can bring your forehead over those props as your feet go out, probably a little bit farther from your body, just so you're able to prop yourself up. And forward fold here. You can place your hands out in front of you. You can place them under your forehead or even beside you, whatever really is best. Breathe here into those hips. Also watch those sit bones again. See if you can ground them further down into the earth so they're not leaning up out. You're not leaning up out over that, out of that low back. Let your breath carry you through these movements. Whatever arises, let it flow. Watch it as it passes through. Whatever thoughts, feelings, sensations. Continue to check in with yourself. Where'd your mind go? And connect it to your body. Take a couple more breaths here. Your next inhale, slowly come out of the pose. Release your legs, those hips. Maybe shake them out a bit. We're now going to come into a side supported twist. So you can take those props again. Let's say maybe just one, depending on how big or small your pillows are. And we're going to bring it right up to, let's do the right side first. So connect the prop up to your right hip. And then you're going to bend your knees so that you're at an angle. So you're sitting on your right hip with your knees bent. And then slowly start to walk your hands, frame the hands over the prop and walk them slowly over and lay your head down. You can lay your right ear down to the prop, to the supported bolster, and hang here. I'm gonna prop up in case y'all can't hear me. See if you can get your left hip to be square with your right so that you're not leaning out of the hips. You're not off center. See if you can square them up. It'll be easier for you, easier for your hips. And breathe here. Notice if there's any sensations or uncomfortability in your body. See if it's something you can breathe with. If it's pain, definitely come out of it and move in a way that feels best for you. If it's emotion, breathe. Couple more breaths here. If you've wandered off, come back to your body. And on your next inhale, slowly come out of the pose, walking yourself up to center, up to seated position. And take the other side. So bring the prop over to your left hip or just turn around, whatever is better. And sit down on your left hip and fold over to the left side, bringing your hands on either side of your prop. Lengthening out, you can place your left ear down on the ground, on the prop. And again, you can reach your shoulders out, lengthen your hands out above your head. You can even bring them up on the prop and rest your head on your hands. Whatever feels better for your shoulders. And see if you can square out those hips. So bring the knees together, parallel the legs. Notice what it feels like to be on a different side. And again, if there's any pain that you're experiencing, please come out of it. If it's difficult sensations or emotions, see if you can breathe with it and give yourself some compassion. If your mind is wandering, notice it, let it flow, and bring yourself back to the present. Take a couple more breaths here. On your next inhale, slowly come up, walk yourself back up to a seated center position. And I forgot to mention in the beginning, but we're going to be using, if you can have a wall or even the side of a couch or a chair, we're going to do legs up the wall variation. You're also going to need props for this as well. If possible, maybe 2 different cushions to place under your knees if you need to. So we're going to come to legs up the wall first. So bring your hips up to the side of the wall, sitting to the side like this, and then lay down and slowly turn to place your legs up the wall in a parallel position. If you would like to, you can always place a small blanket under the hips if that is helpful for you. I'm going to hold here. You can bring your hands, palm faces up, out to the sides of your body, letting the energy flow from your feet all the way down into your hips, into the ground. Picture your body melting into the earth, connecting deeply to the earth's energy. Picture your head releasing any kind of tension, tightness. Let the earth hold it, carry it. Release that energy. Now go to your shoulders, your arms. Let them release, let go down into the ground. Now become aware of your chest, your abdomen, your core, center of your body. On your exhale, release down into the ground. Release the muscles, any energy or tension you're holding. Let the earth hold you. Release your hips, all that energy flowing from the tops of your feet down into the ground. Let the earth hold your hips. We're now going to bring our legs into a wide V position. You're welcome to keep them pretty at a 45-degree angle. You can also bring props, again, pillows on the sides of your hips so that can help you prop up as well into a wide leg V. I even kind of like to put them a little bit under so that I'm almost sitting, my hips are almost kind of propped up on the cushions. And just allow your legs to sink down as far as you'd like them to go, as far as feels good for you. Lengthening out to those inner thighs. And hold here. You might even notice your legs moving a little bit, sinking down an inch or so. That's your body releasing. If you want, you can also turn your head very slowly from right to left, and massaging out the back of your head, releasing out that neck. Couple more breaths here. Slowly start to walk your legs up a little bit farther up the wall. You can use your hands to support, bring them up as well. We're going to bring our soles of our feet together, bring our heels down to your hips, and Supta Baddha Konasana on the wall. So again, I'd probably keep the props under your knees as well here. And we'll pause here with the long pinky side edge of your feet up against the wall and your toe side of your feet towards you. And now you can rest them here, or sorry, rest them anywhere on the wall that feels best for you. Generally, a more relaxed position is going to be your heels closer to your root. You can also bring one hand on your abdomen, one hand on your heart. If it's possible, you can also bring your hands up to your feet, place them gently on your ankles, on your knees, or even under your knees to help support you. Whatever hand position you'd like to take. Take a couple more deep breaths here. Noticing any sensations, feelings, emotions that are present. Let them be and let them flow. Slowly start to bring your knees together. You can walk your feet up the wall a little bit more to help it be a little easier. And we're actually going to scoot just a little bit farther away from the wall because we're going to take a figure 4 against the wall. So it's easier to have your hips a little bit further from the wall so that there's more of a 90-degree angle with your knee and your hip. Then we're going to take your right ankle over your left knee, in front of your left knee, and stay here for figure 4 hip opener stretch. You're welcome to give yourself a little gentle push on your right knee or stay here. Bring some circles to your right ankle. Point and flex the foot. And opposite direction. And continue moving it around if you'd like, or pause and stay here. We'll just be here for a few more breaths. Continue to be with whatever sensation is in your body, in your mind. And start to bring your right foot out of position onto the wall. You can move the hip a little bit, give it some hip circles. Release out. Give some little movement into that hip. And bring it parallel to the ground. Put your right foot on the wall. Make sure that right knee is straight over that right hip and your right knee is over that right ankle as well onto the wall. And bring the left ankle, left foot in front of the right knee. Figure 4 stretch on the opposite side. And notice the difference between the two sides. Simply notice. And again, you can press gently on that left knee if that feels good for you. Bring some, excuse me, you can bring some circles to your left ankle as you point and flex the foot. And other side, other direction. And pause here for a few more breaths. And slowly bring your left ankle up, out, and release that left leg, left hip. You can bring some gentle movement, motions into the hip, circle around the leg. And we're gonna slowly come out. So really whatever is best for you. You can move away, farther away from the wall. Come over to one or the other side. Pause here. And start to walk yourself up back to a seated position. Slowly here so that any sensations, energy, blood that rushes down from your head, you're acknowledging that presence in your body. We're now going to come to a supported child's pose. So whatever bolster blocks or anything you need here. Bring your toes together, sit on your heels, knees out wide, bring your pillow bolster in between your knees. You can bring your knees out to a wider position for more hips, although we were just in hips for a while, so bringing them closer together might be more comfortable as well. And gently, I'm actually going to face this way. Gently start to come down over your bolster into a supported child's pose. You can bring one ear down to the side. And again, you can place your hands outstretched above your head or out down with your palms up below to the sides of your knees. Whatever's best for your shoulders right now. Allow this grounding posture, this forward fold, to ground you a little bit more after we had hip openers, heart openers. Notice what it feels like to be in a grounding position. Release the low back. Let your belly fall, chest, neck, head. Now bring your other ear, switch sides, bring your other ear down to the prop. And release out both sides of your neck. Couple more breaths here. And start to bring your neck back to neutral. Walk your hands and body back up to a neutral position. Now going to remove the prop and come into a, coming down into your forearms. And release out here, do a little bit of a extension through the heart, through the abdomen. Releasing the neck, looking up, extending through that heart. Engaging the core, just giving a little release and lengthen out through the spine here. Legs out long behind you. Engaging through those shoulders and the back side of the shoulders. And gently start to release all the way down to the mat. And turn over. We're going to take Savasana, supported Savasana. So whatever props you need, pillow, blanket, under your knees, under your head, whatever feels best for you. Release all the way down to the floor, onto your back. And release here. Make any movements or adjustments you need for your body to feel comfortable. Notice what it feels like to be in your body right now. And breathe. Start to come back to your breath here, your body. Start to bring some sensations, some feelings back into your body. Move your hands, your toes, your ankles, wrists. Your next inhale, roll over to one side and pause here. Letting your body settle and become present. Noticing the sensation it has connecting to the earth. And slowly start to come up to a seated position. Eyes closed. And pause here. Feel the sit bones grounded into the earth. We're now going to take Nadi Shodhana. So if you'd like to look at the hand position, you can open your eyes, you can keep them closed. But you're going to take your right palm up facing and take your pointer finger and middle finger and close them into your palm. And then you're going to extend your pinky and ring finger out to the left and your thumb out to the right. And exhale fully out through the body, through the nostrils. And bring your right thumb to close your right nostril. Inhale through the left. Exhale through the left. And close the left nostril at the exhale. Open the right, inhale right. Exhale right. Close right. Inhale left. Exhale left. Close left. Inhale right. Exhale right. Close. Inhale left. Exhale left. Close. Inhale right. Exhale right. Close. And continue this at your own pace. Relax your shoulders. And continue here for a couple more minutes. And wherever you are in your cycle, give me two more rounds. One full round is inhale and exhale through both sides. And when you're done, release your hands, release the mudra. Continue to close down the eyes. And bring your hands, palms down on the knees. Take a couple deep inhales here. And start to ground down and picture the root chakra. We've done some practices of engaging and letting go, letting the energy flow through the body down into the ground and letting the earth support us. Let's engage through that here and right now. Letting the energy, tension, muscles, all whole mind, body, system release into the ground as it melts away. Now picture a cord that goes from your root chakra down into the earth. It's your connection, it's your tether. Picture it rooting down, growing far beneath you into the earth center, into the earth's core. As you connect to that energy, picture that energy from the earth center rising up through that tether, drawing the energy up through the cord and to your root chakra, engaging through the spine all the way up through the heart center, through the shoulders, through the neck, up into the crown. That energy is infinite. It's always there. Some people like to picture it as a white or gold energy. Continue to draw it up through the earth's core, giving you prana, life force, abundance, and energy flowing through your body. Let it light up the different parts of you. You may need some support right now. Different physical parts, emotional parts, mental parts. Where do you need support right now? Continue drawing that energy up through the earth center, through the core, into your legs, your root chakra, up through your core, up the spine. Giving light prana to your body, to your spirit. It's a supporting energy. Picture that cord, that light of energy up through the spine, lengthening out the spine, creating a stabilizing center for your body. What does it feel like to have this kind of energy, this grounding felt sense within you? Letting it sit there within yourself, flowing to the parts of you that need support. On your next inhale, bring your arms down beside your hips. Rise them up, palms up, raise that energy up above your head. Palms together and bring them down into heart center. Let's do that again. Inhale, rise arms up. Meet at the top. And exhale, hands to heart center. One more time. Inhale, rise arms up. Feel that energy, grounding, energizing energy at the top. And exhale, hands to heart center. Bring that energy, seal it. Press those thumbs into the sternum, to that heart center again. Feel that felt presence. Thank you for practicing. Namaste. Okay. So we are going to take a few minutes, bathroom, water, and we'll come back at 10:20. Does that sound good? Yeah. Okay. Good, Nita. I'm glad. All right. Hello, everybody. How was practice? How did it feel? Anybody? Yeah? Anyone have anything come up? Sensations, emotions, or difficulty even with anything we did? No? Okay, well, we're gonna go through it anyway. I'm gonna explain a reason why I did a few things. Oh, good. I'm glad your lower back pain is gone. Question, do you have any idea what it was that helped with that, Yogi Alexandria?
No, I don't. I was hoping you can tell me. I don't know
Yeah.
what it was, but I've been having lower back pain for weeks and it's only gotten worse. But after practice, I don't feel it.
Okay. Well, I do have an idea. You mean just this practice or in general whenever you practice anything or yoga?
Just this practice, I don't feel it.
Okay. Well, probably a couple things. One, sometimes releasing hips and hamstrings that we did a little bit of, but we did kind of get into the hips a bit. That can have an effect on your low back, as well as releasing tension. Literal, like emotional and mental tension can release low back, can have much more of an emotional or mental component to it. And so what you'll see and what we're going to go through is that when the nervous system is really tight and controlled, that can create more of a physical pain or sensations in the body that are like usually are like our low back can, when it hurts, it's really tight. There isn't a lot of movement or energy flowing through it. And so when we can relax and release our nervous system and we can calm the body, as well as grounding down into the earth, it releases some of that tension. So that could possibly be part of it as well. So I'm going to start sharing my screen for the presentation and we'll go through that.
That makes a lot of sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, let's go to the beginning. Okay, can y'all, I'm trying to make sure I see this. Can you see the slides right now? Is it working? Okay, cool. Okay, so this morning we did a kind of a yin flow. The reason why I did more of I held the poses for maximum of 5 minutes. I don't go farther into that, especially in beginner and especially with anxiety, because a lot of times someone with anxiety, it's going to be hard for them to really hold a pose for a long time because their heart might be pounding, their mind is going to be racing, they're going to be like, I can't sit in this for a while. Although that's what they need, right? If we are, think of it as we're more in like a Raja state, we need to come back to, sometimes we have to move through tamas to get to sattva, which is the same here. If we're really in an anxious state, sometimes we need to get down and pause and breathe and take movements slow and relaxing. It's just going to be hard sometimes when someone is very, very anxious to get them to do that. So I try to kind of meet them in the middle of, okay, let's do some slower poses, but maybe not hold it for 10 minutes at a time. Another reason I do that as well is because that, well, personally, I have learned I actually am very hypermobile in my body. And for me to hold poses for a long time is not great for me physically. So I also try to meet that as well. I know it can hurt if we're not used to the pose to hold it for an extra long period of time. So 2 different reasons. Let's see if I can get this. I'm trying to see you all as well. By the way, stop me at any point if you have any questions. I don't have the chat in front of me right now, but I will try and go.
People write questions into the chat and people raise their hand. Do you want me to touch base with you and give you a heads up?
Yeah, I'm totally happy to pause throughout. I know it's easier sometimes to ask a question when I'm on the subject. So yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Can I just ask a quick question? This is Eva.
Yeah, hi, Eva.
And this has nothing to do with what we just did. I actually wanted to do with slides and how you're putting it all together.
Uh-huh.
Is this from that, was it called To Me, or where you have?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Just wanted to ask about
Yeah.
that.
So what
Okay.
I did, and I actually asked Michelle this because she's done this before, and I've used Toomey, but I was like, how do I get them on a slideshow? I just took a screenshot of the practice, and then that's just a picture there of the poses.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so wait, did I not? Just a second. Oh, so sorry, I'm going back to this one. The poses that I did were more grounding. As you recognize, as I was talking through them, I really wanted to picture us recognizing that our body, ourselves are grounded to the floor. When we're in an anxious mind, we're up here, right? We're floating all around. We are not centered. And so any type of cue that you can give to bring the body back to the earth, to bring the body back to the center, to bring your mind back to your center of your body is going to really be beneficial. Any questions about the poses that we did, or why, or anything? That's somewhat straightforward.
I had a question.
Yeah.
Just because I know hip openers can tend to be really emotional for people. Do you ever see like adverse side effects when you're dealing with anxiety specifically?
Sometimes you're right, it can increase it. And that's also why I would just watch, especially if we're talking about yoga therapy, it's going to be much more individual. And so you can really watch the person. In a group class, you can still kind of see as well, but that's also why I would say to maybe not hold it for as long of a period of time, and to really give options and modifications. If it's hurting, if it's too much, please come out of it. I know a big part of yin is to really get comfortable with the sensations, right? To breathe through it. And that's a big part of it. And that's helpful. I also don't want to make it worse. I don't want to like heighten the nervous system and become more anxious or more emotional when it's not needed. And so to find that balance can be tricky, but to really just give as many cues as possible of like, if this is too much sensation, please come out and try a different pose or modify it. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah.
About one of the poses. Hi, it's Tracy.
Hi, Tracy.
Every single time I do Baddha Konasana and folding forward over pillows or bolsters, it is a pose that just is not accessible for me. Do you have any options so that I could do that consistently and say, oh, okay, we're going to do that. Well, this is what I'm going to do instead.
Are you saying that it's no matter even if you're folding forward or sitting up straight, it's your body's position to not, your feet can't bring your feet together?
No, it's just in the Baddha Konasana where folding forward, my body just does not come forward.
Okay. Yeah. So honestly, even just sitting up straight and not folding forward, or releasing your legs out to a wide leg and then folding forward, because you're still getting that forward fold benefit and sensation. It's just not bending at the knees, and that's totally okay.
Okay.
Can you access that?
Yeah, I sure can.
Okay.
So we're looking for the forward fold rather than where our legs are.
Yes, more so. I mean, when our knees are bent, then you're going to get more of the hips, but that's okay. If your knees are straight, you're still getting that inner thigh, right? You're still folding forward. And when we're folding forward, it's more of a grounding. And in this practice, at least, especially with anxiety, that's what we're looking for, is the grounding presence.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Just piggybacking off of that for a second. So for someone like Tracy, is like a wide-legged forward fold going to be more beneficial, or more like a staff pose kind of forward fold?
Probably either. I'm thinking, well, Tracy, is a staff pose forward fold, is that accessible to you as well?
That one is pretty difficult. I like the wide leg, seated
Okay.
forward fold a lot better.
Okay.
Okay.
I'd say
Yeah,
it's
'cause
probably
and then that way
either.
she's getting her inner thigh stretch as well, so she's not lacking as much.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay. So then
Great.
we did, yes.
I have a question. I'm just walking my dog. So
Okay.
this is Charlotte here. My question was, I actually am on my period right now. And so all of the inversions, I kind of just skipped them and just did a basic on the floor. And or like, you know what I mean, without legs up the
Yeah.
wall or inversion
Okay.
wise. And so
Okay.
I just changed it. And I'm just kind of wondering, just with monthly hormones and different things. And I didn't experience it, but I know some people have, like just more anxiety and stuff during that time of the month. And just
Mhm.
I know that the whole thing with inversions and this and that, I just kind of just wondering what your stance was on it with anxiety, or I don't know. It's a tough question. It's a silly question, but it was just a thought that I had because I was there this morning.
Yeah, no, it's not silly. I mean, that's very valid because it happens, right? I mean, the monthly cycle definitely affects us. And it can increase anxiety or depression, really, whichever you kind of lean towards. So I would say that if you're not experiencing that, if you're not on your cycle, usually legs up the wall can be a very relaxing and can be grounding pose because you are getting that change in energy of the blood flow. But definitely what you did, I think, is just exactly what you needed to do. And probably, I mean, that's actually a good idea to cue anyway, to say, like, if this is you, definitely take it on the floor because it's still beneficial, right? It's still getting the same lengthening and stretching and grounding. It's just not like up the wall, it's just a little bit different. Yeah. So
Thanks
I
so
wouldn't
much.
say, yeah, you're welcome. I wouldn't say that, I would say just to cue it. It's another modification, it's an option, right?
Perfect. Thank you. I just was curious. Thank you so much.
Yeah, for sure. No, thanks for bringing it up. Anything else about the asana practice from anyone? Okay. So then we went to pranayama nadi shodhana. And if you were a part of the yoga therapy for anxiety, the short course that Michelle did before, I don't know how many people attended that and this one, but she went over this, and some of the, well, FYI, some of the stuff that we'll do will be overlapping with that, but we'll also be including much more practice, experiential, and talking through certain ways to work with anxiety. So Nadi Shodhana increases oxygen flow in the body. If you noticed, and the reason why we do it after asana is because your breathing will be different. And after any kind of asana practice, you'll probably be able to breathe deeper. You'll be able to regulate your nervous system during this certain breathing technique. You're reducing stress and anxiety, especially with this one. You're balancing the left and the right side of the brain. And the left right side of the body, which is also the masculine and feminine energies. And so when we're doing that, we're bringing more of our body all full online with each other, the whole body system. And so instead of when we are in somewhat of an anxious mood, you're not fully integrated. Your whole body is not online. The right and the left brain are not connected. This can also help enhance concentration due to allowing more breath and flow to be flowing through your body, right? If we are tight and constricted, if we're anxious, that breath is going to be really shallow, probably more in the chest and a little bit in the throat, but you're not going to feel the breath throughout the body or in the mind or in the brain. I tell this probably to most people, like the beginning of when I see them is when we're anxious, we are not getting oxygen to the rest of our body. We're not getting it to our brain. And so if we're not getting enough oxygen to our brain, how are we going to think clearly and make decisions in a grounded and aligned way? So that's one benefit of Nadi Shodhana, and really any pranayama practice that is a calming practice. And we'll go over that more. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
I know there's different ways to do Nadi Shodhana, and so the way that I've typically learned is that you inhale one nostril, then exhale through the other nostril, and then inhale from that nostril and exhale first. And with your practice, you did one nostril, inhale, exhale, and then go to the other side, inhale, exhale. And so I'm just wondering why you chose that particular way. Are there differences from an anxiety perspective in terms of different, alternative nostril breathing approaches?
That's a good question. That is the way that I learned. That's the way that I did it. To be honest, I am not completely sure of that answer. I would actually ask, she's not on right now, Anna Pilar, but I know she will be later. Does anyone else have the answer to that question? The difference between those?
I've never done it the way you did it in this practice, but I was in the pranayama week long with Anna Pilar, and the way that Anna Pilar teaches it is closer to what you said, though she doesn't. She uses locks. I think it's locks. Like not blocking your nostril at the bottom, but the valve. Sorry, not
valve. She uses the valve.
She uses the valves as well. So I don't know if it's just different flavors, but I had never seen it this way before.
The valve I know is going to be more of a pranayama technique, and I didn't cue that in the beginning, but if y'all haven't heard, the valve is what you're really supposed to do in pranayama, and anytime you're doing alternate nostril breathing, instead of closing the bottom of the nostril to go up to where more of the cartilage is and valve it instead of completely closing it. That way there's a little bit more energy flowing through there. But the inhale one and exhale one, and then the other, the alternate, that is, I would assume, I mean, if I'm thinking out loud right now, you're starting to inhale and exhale one side. So you're balancing that side, and then you're going to the other. And it's creating more of a calming, probably, because you're not going inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale. You're doing it more on a slow side to side basis. Does that make sense? It's more of a pausing, slow integration between the right and the left side. That's my guess. Okay. So after pranayama, we went to grounding visualization for pratyahara. This is probably my go-to for anxiety, and not that exact one that I did. That's something that just kind of flows through me, but any type of grounding practice so we can anchor into the earth. We can recognize that our body is safe as we ground into the earth. We can recognize that we are tethered to the earth's energy. It's very centering and grounding. Grounding is just one of the #1 techniques I use. That way, we're able to bring ourselves back to the present. We're able to bring ourselves centered and aligned. And when we're able to do that, we're able to think a little bit clearly and because when we're anxious, we are not present. We are much more future focused. We're thinking fast paced. We're maybe ruminating about the same thought over and over again. Our body might feel tingly, tight, constricted. So we're not present, and bringing us back to anything that's sensory grounding, especially that visualization. Anything that we can visualize into a grounding presence is going to really help decrease anxiety. Helps calm the mind, and opens the body. Any questions about that? Have y'all done anything like this before, or is this new?
I have done visualizations like that before.
Okay. Kind of figured if you are in this, you probably have. But it's definitely my go-to, like I said. Okay, well, that was our practice for this morning. We're now going to go into talking about generally what is anxiety. So anxiety is your body's response to a natural response to stress. It's a feeling of fear, apprehension about what's to come. And like I said, when we're in anxiety, we're going to be very future oriented. There's not a lot of anxiety that is present oriented or even from the past. What happens is when our stress response is engaged, we feel a threat and we feel like there is something that is going to happen that we have to take control of. And when we need to take control of that, we may not know exactly what that is, maybe completely uncertain. Usually the thoughts that we have that are in anxiety, they're thoughts about what could or should or would happen. They may not be realistic, they may not be rational. They're going to be something that keeps us up. I'm sure anyone here has experienced some level of anxiety or worry or fear. And it's difficult to deal with, right? Especially if you can't rationalize with yourself. And that's also why yoga is amazing for anxiety, is because we can't always focus just on the thoughts. We can't just like switch off and be like, okay, I'm going to change that thought that I have that's anxious. If that were the case, I wouldn't have a job. So what we're really recognizing here, especially in yoga therapy, is how to engage the mind and the body, how to bring ourselves into a natural, what's called parasympathetic nervous system, which is that calming state, instead of sympathetic nervous system, which is going to be the anxiety state. Let's see. Anxiety is our primal survival response to fear. So I'll go over more of the stress response and the polyvagal theory today after lunch, but this is just a general overview to get us acquainted with it. The primal survival response, again, means that when we perceive something as a threat, our nervous system is going to go kick into high gear and say, I need to be alert, I need to protect myself, or I need to protect whoever's around me. That's natural. At the same time, it can go into overdrive and become more harm inducing than protecting. So like I said, anxiety is very future oriented. Depression is usually oriented towards the past, ruminating, shutting down, thinking about what did happen, unable to process or move on from a difficult experience or trauma. Depression is going to be more about lethargy, withdrawal, cut off from our emotional state. Anxiety can actually provoke a lot more of an emotional state, experiencing all different types of emotions. Anxiety is technically an emotion. Underlying anxiety is going to be fear. Usually anytime I can recognize an anxious thought, there's most likely going to be fear underneath it. If we can really take it and distill it down to its core, there's going to be fear of something, scared of what's going to happen. So there's this little graphic that I have on our slide, worry versus anxiety. So anxiety is a normal reaction to stress or difficult times. Any of us, like I said, has experienced some sort of anxiety with a normal amount, and I'm going to call this worry. It says on here anxiety, but I'm going to call it worry. Worry has a start and ending point. It can be triggered by a specific stressor. It can be helpful or motivational, right? If we have a deadline to meet and we might start to become worried about it, then we might meet that deadline. We might get our work done, and that's normal. That's okay. But it becomes an anxiety disorder when it lasts for weeks and months at a time, when there's an intense or disproportional emotional response. A lot of times in anxiety disorder, the anxiety can come out of nowhere. The response to some sort of stimuli that creates that anxiety, it's not proportional. It doesn't make sense for that scenario to have this intense of an anxiety or to last for a certain amount of time. It interferes with day-to-day life, can't get things done. You're unable to sleep, unable to really have a conversation with someone because you may be so caught up in your thoughts or so anxious in your body that you can't even be present talking with someone. Physical symptoms like sweating, trembling, lightheadedness, racing heart, those are all associated with anxiety disorder. With worry, there's more of a, it can disappear when the stimuli goes away, when we meet that deadline or when you take a test. But with anxiety, you're probably going to continue thinking about that deadline, continue thinking about that test over and over, whether you did well, whether you didn't do well, whether you missed something, whether you didn't miss something, and you're going to keep ruminating about it for days on end. Does this make sense? Does everyone understand the difference between worry and anxiety? Yeah. Okay. So some characteristics, I call them characteristics, that you can see with anxiety. I don't call them personality characteristics, just because sometimes that can, people may associate that with being very permanent, and this doesn't necessarily have to be permanent, these characteristics. But some of them may include perfectionism. So really having to get something completely right, and always that fear of failure. Fear of failure is very strong and very big with anxiety, because anytime we fear that we're about to fail, we're about to mess up, we're about to do something wrong, that anxiety is going to increase and kick into high gear. And really at the core of perfectionism is that fear of failure. I had a client one time say, I don't think I'm a perfectionist because I've never gotten anything right. And I kind of looked at her, and we both were like, and she was like, oh my gosh. I just recognized that it's exactly perfectionism. I can't get anything right, or that's what I think. I can't get anything perfect, not 100%. I'm always striving for more and more and more. And a lot of times anxiety drives that. There's that fear that's driven there. Black and white thinking, which is more like polarization. So being really, really happy and excited about something, or really, really sad and in complete total despair. Thinking that everything has to be, again, perfect, or everything is horrible. Black and white thinking can drive a lot of anxiety, and it's actually more of a cycle. The cycle of anxiety can drive that black and white thinking as well. Another example would be like, I have to get all of my training done before I start practicing. Like I can't engage in any type of practice. I can't lead anything. I can't even practice leading a group before I get all of my training done. Or even if you don't finish the last itsy bit time of your practice, it won't be perfect. It won't be completely done. I don't know if that completely makes sense, but I think you'll probably understand what I'm saying. The need to control, which is also similar to these as well. If you're going on a trip and someone has a high anxiety about leaving, about planning, that need for control is going to make you feel better. If you have everything in line, you know that things, you assume, you perceive that things will go according to plan if you have everything in control. Now, it's not always necessarily the case, right? You can't predict the future just by planning, but our minds think that if I have everything set out perfectly and I can control the situation, then everything will be fine. It'll appease my anxiety. I'll decrease my anxiety by being in control of everything around me. And sometimes it does work. It helps to decrease that anxiety in the moment, but it doesn't fix it. It doesn't help. It's more just suppressing the symptom. Think of these things, as suppressing the anxiety. It's a quick fix in the moment. Being risk averse, or a strong need for comfort, also goes along with needing to control. If there's something that we don't know or we're uncertain about, we're not really going to want to go into it. Someone with anxiety, especially with an anxiety disorder, most likely is not going to be someone that's going to take a risk very often or do something out of the norm. They're going to seek comfort, which is stability, which can look like control. Does this make sense to everyone? I know I keep asking that, but I'm making sure. Okay. So as I said before, also future-oriented thinking and having a really hard time. Oops, sorry. Oh no. Having a really hard time staying in the present moment. Rumination means that you are continuing to think about the same thought over and over and over. You're ruminating about the same thought. That's what I mean when I say ruminating. You can't let it go. It's not able to flow. You're not able to rationalize with it. Even if there is honestly a rationalization that someone may point out to you, you're probably still going to keep thinking about the same thought over and over and over, or the same worry or fear over and over and over, because you just can't calm it. You can't figure it out, or any reason doesn't work. So thinking about these and looking at these characteristics, does anyone have examples of what either they or like a friend has experienced with this, with any of these? Just so we can get some examples.
I can jump in and say that, so I took the pranayama workshop and a whole bunch of, with Anna Pilar, and a whole bunch of different techniques that I've never been exposed to. And we're supposed to, for homework, design a class. And I'm kind of like, I want to just reminding myself over and over again, I'm new to this. I know I'm familiar with the practices that I'm familiar with, and don't try to jump in and design the perfect class with the just right pranayama. Like, keep it simple. Just do, just do the basics the first time I do it, because I have to start. So just reminding myself, instead of I'm not going to do it because I can't do it right. Right. So I'll just do what I can do. And then my teacher will tell me, oh, you could have done this. And then I'll learn and I'll try again. Right. So that kind of thinking of perfectionism.
When you're doing that, you're giving yourself compassion. You're giving yourself some grace in that, really, and thinking that, okay, I don't have to be the perfect student. I don't have to have everything perfect at this moment. And when you're talking to yourself, you're kind of taking the opposite action, right? You're saying, instead of having to be the perfect student, have everything right, I'm going to give myself a little leeway. I'm going to give myself some compassion and some grace, knowing that it doesn't always have to be that way. So when we're doing that, some of these techniques that we use with people or even just the messages that we can help with are, they really are sometimes the opposite action. It's taking a black and white thinking and bringing in some gray. That's going to be more opposite. Or that control that we need to bring actually a little less control. We need to let go of that control. There needs to be a little bit more variability within our thinking and our actions. So, yeah. Thanks, Amy. Okay. So we're going to go through each day. We're going to go through a couple different anxiety disorders and talk through them, talk about what exactly they are, how to identify them, and how to work with them. Now, and I think, yeah, they're all right here: generalized anxiety, social anxiety, phobias, panic disorder, obsessive compulsive, and PTSD. Now, technically, PTSD is not a part of the anxiety disorders. If you look in the DSM, it's a separate section, but we included it here because it does have anxiety associated with it. And I know some of y'all took the trauma-informed yoga a couple weeks ago, which you would have gone through a lot of it, but we're still going to touch on it because I always need to hear things more than once, right? Okay, so the first one we're going to talk through is generalized anxiety disorder. So the descriptions here come pretty much straight from the DSM. I summarized it because we don't need to know all the details in the DSM. Because especially as yoga teachers, you're not going to be diagnosing. I don't even fully diagnose as a therapist. I do if I need to, but I don't believe that everyone needs a diagnosis. I think it's too labeling. So this is more of an idea for you to identify different characteristics, right? So that someone that you may come across, it's not totally out of the realm or totally out of your mind, not knowing what it is. Because if we can identify it, then we can recognize more what to do with it or more how to refer out. The practices that you're going to learn are going to be more generalized to anxiety and overall, because at the core, you'll recognize that treatments for each disorder really come down to a very core practice of bringing yourself back to the present moment, grounding yourself, calming your nervous system. It really all does. There's some variability depending on the disorder, but if you get anything from this is knowing really the core of how to work with anxiety. So generalized anxiety disorder displays excessive anxiety or worry most days for at least 6 months. So there has to be that time period in there to have a diagnosis. And it can be about a number of things, such as personal health, work, social interactions, everyday routine, life circumstances. The fear and anxiety can cause significant problems in areas of their life, such as social interactions, school, and work. So for anything to be a diagnosis, there has to be some type of an impairment in that person's life. You can go through the DSM and you can pick out probably many different disorders that you're like, oh, I kind of have some of that, or like this person has some of that. But it does not mean that you have a disorder. Just because you have some worry does not mean you have an anxiety disorder. It has to be a very increased impairment on your life, that your inability to get work done, inability to connect with your family, inability to do daily tasks and complete life as needed, as get your basic needs met. So, sorry, let me pause just a second. Okay. Symptoms of generalized anxiety disorder: feeling restless, wound up, or on edge, being easily fatigued, having difficulty concentrating, mind going blank. And when I say this, or this is really coming from the DSM, that mind going blank thing can actually be somewhat of a dissociation, where you really are not present. You're kind of cut off from the present. You're frozen because there's been so much anxiety built up in your body and your system that it doesn't know what to do with it anymore. So it just kind of shuts off consciousness for a minute. It doesn't mean that your dissociation doesn't totally mean that you're in like a different realm and you're thinking something totally different. It's literally just kind of like a blank stare, and you're having a hard time concentrating on the present moment. This can happen especially right before a panic attack, which is what we'll go into, or even during a panic attack. But again, it's when that anxiety is really rampant and increased, and your system, your body's just like, I can't do this anymore. So it just shuts off. Being irritable. I see this a lot, especially with people coming in saying like, I'm just all of a sudden super irritable in the past few months. I'm snapping at everyone. Like, I don't understand why. And when there's anxiety in the body, again, it's expressing itself in different ways because it doesn't know what to do with it, or it's just overwhelmed. So you're going to express these things, and you're going to express irritability. You might get angry. You might become a little bit more emotional, upset. Muscle tension is a big one with anxiety, because again, you're tight and controlled. That energy is stuck. When we're anxious, there's a lot of shoulders that go up, right? Your neck is tight. Your hips become tense. your legs. I mean, really anything, but a lot of it is carried up in the upper portion of your body. Your chest is tight, back is tight. So I would say I see a lot of muscle tension with anxiety. And a lot of times it can be hard to release from just purely stretching. It's not always that simple. So I'd say if someone keeps complaining about they're doing their stretches, they're doing their exercises, and like the muscle tension just is not releasing, there's something more there. There's something deeper. There is more of probably an emotional release that needs to happen. And a lot of times when we do have anxiety, sometimes that emotion deeper, whatever we need to process, it's not being accessed. Instead, we're staying up here in our minds with the anxiety instead of really dropping down to what's in the center, what's in the core, what we really need to process. So the anxiety is really more of a symptom. Difficulty controlling feelings of worry. So yes, if we have a lot of worry, we don't have as much, or it increases over time, then it can form into anxiety to build up. Sleeping problems is, I see a lot. If you're thinking all the time, you're gonna have a hard time sleeping, gonna have a hard time relaxing. Your body isn't gonna be able to release. You're not gonna be able to rest and relax. So ruminating or even waking up in the middle of the night because that fear is just so rampant and it has such a strong hold over you and your body that it's not gonna let you relax, because our bodies think that if I relax, if I let go of that control, something's going to happen. Again, it's the fear. Something's going to happen if I let go. And whatever that is, I'm not going to be able to protect myself. So really what we're teaching people with anxiety is that you can let go and that you can protect yourself. You can find security and safety without the anxious thoughts. Okay. So general treatment. These are, so this slide you can, definitely use for anything, for any disorder, any anxiety disorder. This is it's a generalized state, but also it works for all anxiety. So mindfulness or uses of the senses, and I'm going to go through sensory exploration and exercises later, but overall it's anytime we are, especially with panic attacks, someone that experiences panic attacks, using anything sensory is huge. When I worked in the eating disorder treatment center, we would have ice packs on hand like all the time, because especially when a client is eating and they have a really hard time eating, they're very anxious. Their body is not regulating itself. And anytime we can do something sensory like an ice pack, it kind of shocks the system in a way. Like, hey, wait, I'm here, right? I'm here, I'm present. I can hold this ice pack or this heating pad, or anything weighted, or sensing, right? Smelling any different types of smells can engage your senses again and bring you back to the present moment, which goes along with mindfulness, right? Bringing yourself back to the present. So another exercise that I use with people is noticing the feet, noticing your feet on the ground, touching the chair that you're in. Like I'll have people just do this in session when I recognize that they're elevated, and noticing purely like, what are you feeling? What can you touch right now that can bring you back? How do you feel your feet on the ground? How do you feel your sit bones in the chair? Or can you feel your sit bones in the chair, really? So again, anything sensory. Can you notice 5 things that are green in the room right now? I use that a lot. Pranayama, anything that is langana or calming. And if you're in the pranayama practice, you probably know this, that anytime we can increase the exhales, that brings more of a calming effect to the body. So the first thing that I really talk to people about if they've literally never done a breathing exercise before, don't really recognize what that means, is I talked about bringing more airflow to their abdomen. And I usually always say abdomen instead of belly, because abdomen can be triggering. Belly can be triggering because it has a certain connotation, right? Like belly can mean fat, it can mean, especially with someone that has any kind of like food or body image issue, it can be a little triggering. So even if someone doesn't, I always say abdomen. So I talk about breathing in through the nose and exhaling like out through the mouth. I tell people to do that all the time with any type of anxiety to bring them back to the present, because you can do that anywhere at any time. It also tones the vagus nerve, which is again a big part of anxiety and what we'll talk about later as well. Boxed breathing is a very beginner one that I talk with people about when they're first learning about it as well. It's easy for them to understand. It has the same ratio, right? I start with sometimes probably 3 or 4 count ratio box breathing. Excuse me. It's easier for them to remember, and I'll do it with them to start off. Any other pranayamas that y'all know that helps calm you, that are your go-tos? I'm always helpful, or always looking for people to know what their go-tos are. Anybody?
Box breathing.
Okay, cool. So you use that too. Okay.
I like the finger breathing exercise that Michelle was talking about in the shorter yoga therapy for anxiety course.
Yes, I like that one as well. I'm glad you brought that up. I didn't put that on here, but that's a great one. If you all don't,
right, Brahmari in the chat also, and I love Brahmari too.
Oh yeah. Okay. I don't know if y'all recognize the hand one. If we have, I might actually just put that in here to have anyway. But it also engages visually, right? When you can picture your hand and you're going with, there's something that you can look at, there's something you can feel as you breathe. So it engages more than just one sense. So much as this comes back to the senses. So yeah, I love that one. Anything else?
It looks like Skylar has a hand up.
Oh, okay. Skylar?
Yeah, I actually had a question on the use of senses. So I know a lot of people are liking this cold shower technique and bring themselves back in. But I was wondering, like, when it comes to Ayurveda and it being like a Vata imbalance a lot of times, like, what do you think about that with the cold shower aggravating Vata?
There is a lot of talk about that right now. And especially, I don't know if y'all have heard of the, what is his name? Wim Hof?
Yeah, the Hof.
That's a cool, yeah. So I've actually had many people say that, actually, it's funny, I just had someone yesterday say, like, if they just go, they're really anxious about something, they'll go and take a cold shower. If it works, if it helps, it helps. If it's activating, you'll hear me say this a lot. Like, if I don't know, there's always rules, but really listen to your body. If it helps and it works for you, if it calms you down, if it stimulates you in a different way and brings you back to the present, great. Like, I'm all for it as long as it doesn't hurt you or anyone else. But if there is something that is stimulating, like it's activating, like maybe you've had an experience or a trauma around water, and that's not going to be helpful for you. So I know that it does activate, it can activate the Vata, and that is part of anxiety as well. But I also know that everybody's body is different and reacts differently to different senses and stimuli. So what one thing is going to work for someone isn't always going to work for the other person. So Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm going to check out the chat real quick. It looks like we have some. Visualization where from the base of your spine, you inhale and imagine cooling waving up, and exhale, roll heat down to the abdomen. Yes, it's not pranayama, you're right, but any time that we can inhale energy, something cooling, and exhale that heat out, that's great for anxiety, because that's what's built up. There's a lot of heat in our body. We need to exhale, express it, and invite calming and cooling energies into our body. So yeah, I'd say that's a great one. Okay, what is next? Meditation, any type of muscle relaxing. We're gonna do, I don't know, can't remember if that's today or tomorrow, but we're gonna do a muscle relaxation one that I use a lot actually for before bed. Like people are having a hard time sleeping, using a basic muscle relaxation meditation can help a lot as well with anxiety. You're releasing that tension from the body, right? When you're contracting and you're releasing your muscles, you're releasing the heat. So you're expressing that from your body, and you're engaging relaxation sensations through breath and through the muscles and through the tension. And like I said earlier, anything grounding, anything grounding visualizations or with the senses is always a go-to for anxiety. Asana, slower rather than fast-paced. So anxiety, a little more rajas, you're gonna want slower practice. Depression, shut off, a little more tamas, you want a little bit more of an energizing practice. So again, I really try to meet them where they are. You're probably going to push someone away if they're highly anxious and you're like, let's do 3 poses, 20 minutes a pose, and just sit here with your thoughts. It actually can be more harmful than helpful, really, because they're just sitting and ruminating the whole time. Even if you're trying to guide them, it's still going to be pretty difficult. So a lot of guidance, and actually any kind of asana, meditation, pranayama, really anything you're doing, guiding them, talking them through is going to be pretty helpful with anxiety, because when you're left alone, which is eventually what we're gradually trying to get to, right? Being a little bit more calm with ourselves and our thoughts and our body. But in the beginning, it's really hard to do that. We have to engage and bring up, build up to that. So I'll use a combination of slow flow, but also guiding a little bit more, giving a little bit more direction and cue so that you're occupied trying to listen to me. But being cautious of people that are going to be really oriented to fast-paced flow. They're going to want to because they have anxiety and they feel like that's good. And there's a time and a place for everything. I wouldn't say to have a slow flow practice every day of the week with anxiety. Just like with anything, we need a balance. But more often than not, I'd say for sure, do slower pace practices. There's a book, Bo Forbes. She's a PsyD, and she has, oh my goodness, I think it's Yoga for Emotional Balance. That's what it's called. And it talks about, I love it because she's very relatable. Like the way that she explains it is very easy to understand and follow. And she talks about depression, anxiety, and different practices for each, and goes through what depression means and what anxiety means and how to apply that in a yogic sense. And then she actually literally has some poses and practices in the back. I've actually taken a lot from that book and from her. So another tool to use, and this is more of a psychotherapy tool, like thought-based practice, is becoming the observer / checking the facts, which comes from called dialectic behavior therapy, DBT. So this is what they call new age theory in psychotherapy, because it's developed in the past maybe 20 years. And becoming an observer is really what it sounds like. Probably a lot of you have experienced that, more of that kind of Buddhist sense of watching the thoughts, watching them flow, which is what I cued as well during the practice, because your mind is going to race and flow with anxiety. So bringing it back to stepping outside of yourself, watching your thoughts flow. That the guided meditation leaves on a stream. Don't know if you'll know what that is, but that is one that I learned using in eating disorder center, and I use all the time now, because it really gives that strong visual of like letting your thoughts be the leaves that are floating down the stream and watching the thoughts go by. So that's being the observer with anxiety, because with anxiety, when you're in your thoughts, you're so consumed by them. You're so consumed by the sensations in your body that you're like a one-track mind. You can't see anything else within that. It's like you have blinders on, right? Like you can't rationalize, you can't figure anything else out. So if we can try to step outside of ourselves, put the anxiety to the side, recognize that it's a part of us. It's not our full selves. Anxiety does not mean it's us, but it's a part of us that is here and is present and is real. So if we can start to observe that, we're starting to separate ourselves from it, separate ourselves, our true selves, from the anxiety. And the more we can do that, the more they become separate. It doesn't take on our whole selves, our whole full body and mind. So that's more of the observer. Checking the facts is going to be really helpful with people with anxiety that also have a difficult time, especially in social situations, social anxiety. This can be helpful because a lot of times with social anxiety, there's some perceived threat or there's some perceived judgment that other people may have on them. And most of the time, well, actually, we don't know, right? You cannot know what someone else is thinking, what's happening within a group. You can't predict that. But our minds go and we perceive that something else is wrong within that social scenario. And so the idea, it's called literally checking the facts, and it's exactly what it sounds like. It's taking yourself out, becoming the observer, and checking every thought that you have, essentially. I tell people to write it down. Write down what that thought is. Like, she thinks that I'm ugly. Well, can we actually check that? Has she said anything, one, that literally means that you are ugly? Has she given you criticism? Has she literally judged you in that way? Is there reason to believe that she would be the kind of person to do that? So you're literally going through questions of what is reality right now. Another example would be like, I'm going to be late for my appointment. And you continue, like you can't sleep because you have some appointment in the morning that you think you're going to be late for. No, we can't predict that. Like, yes, it's a possibility that you could be late. But has that happened yet? No, let's check the facts. What can you do to be prepared for that? Let's check that off. In the past, have you experienced being late for many things? Sometimes yes, but generally people that are very tightly controlled and have anxiety, a lot of times, I don't want to generalize, but not always late. Like, right, if that's been their experience, that they're normally on time, then what makes them think that this time would be different? So a lot of going back, and it sounds like rationalizing kind of is, but it's literally like writing out in one column, what are all your thoughts and fears about this scenario? Okay, can you go over in this column and can you check and see where that would be true, how that could be wrong? Okay. Becoming aware of the fear. So that's the first thing that anyone really is doing. That's what everyone is doing if you're doing any kind of growth work, right? Is becoming aware of you, becoming aware of what are those fears driving the anxiety. So when someone comes in and says like, I just don't know where this is coming from. I don't understand. Like, why am I so anxious all the time? Why am I so worried? Why do I feel this way? I don't get it. If we can become aware of some of those triggers and why some of those experiences are happening, then we can actually start to work with it. We may not always be able to figure out, like, exactly pinpoint why this is happening, but becoming aware gives you knowledge. Knowledge can give you some kind of power. Knowledge and understanding what to do with it gives you even more power, but really starting with that awareness of your fears, awareness of the beliefs that you're telling yourself, those core beliefs that are really driving your behavior and driving your anxiety. That's distilling down exactly what we're trying to get to. So anytime someone talks about, like, it doesn't matter what the context is. It does not matter what the anxiety on the surface level is. There's always something underneath, always some kind of fear or core belief underneath that's driving that behavior and that anxiety. Becoming curious without, I keep clicking on it. Becoming curious without judging. So anytime we're starting to become aware of something, we want to become more curious about it instead of judging ourselves once we figure out the awareness or once we figure out, like, really what's going on. So a lot of times, especially with any kind of anxiety or mental disorder, really, there's so much judgment about ourselves. There's so much judgment about what we're thinking, what we're not thinking, what we're doing, what we're not doing. We're not doing it right. We can't get it right. So becoming curious is, I would say, what I use with anything, really. Okay, so once we become aware of that fear that I can't do anything right, that is my core basic fear. I can't do anything right. How can I become more curious about that rather than being, man, I can't believe I have that fear. I'm like hating on myself because I have that. I can't do it. I can't do anything right. I can't even get this thought right. I can't even figure out this thought. Then you just get in a cycle of judging yourself and becoming critical. And that just perpetuates the fear and creates more of the cycle. So becoming curious would be like, oh, wow, I recognize that thought's happening. I recognize that fear is there. Maybe I do have a little compassion for myself for having that, or, man, I wonder where that's coming from, and I wonder, how can I recognize that in more ways? Where else does that show up in my life? Where else does that show up in my relationships or on a day-to-day basis? Let's find out. Let's be the investigator to figure out where it's popping up. So that's where that curiosity comes into play. Normalizing the experience. So this, I mean, as you can probably tell, a lot of what I'm saying can be more of an individualized experience or practice with someone. But even in a group practice, you can say normalizing things, right? Like, if you're noticing yourself trailing off into thought, let's bring it back to the present moment. Let's become more curious. That normalizes it for everyone, because someone might be thinking, like, why am I always the one to keep thinking and thinking and thinking about this? Especially with anxiety or actually really with any disorder. Anytime someone thinks that they're the only one that's experiencing it, it makes it so much more painful. It's hard because then you're individualized. You're sorry, something just dropped over there. You become this soul. What is the word I'm looking for? Ostracized. So anytime we can normalize an experience for someone, literally it's repeating back. That sounds pretty difficult. Like, that must be really difficult to deal with. Or we can say, like, yeah, I've noticed that happening more and more lately. Like, you don't always want to share your story because it's not about you, it's about them. But even if we can give a little tidbit of, yeah, actually with anxiety, that can be pretty normal to experience X, Y, and Z. To experience ruminating thoughts, or to experience a tight chest, or to experience tightness in your chest, in your shoulders or in your neck. we can experience anything that can normalize, can send a message to say, hey, you're not alone. There's other people that are in this. There's other people that have experienced this as well, or I've experienced this as well. Like even if you're talking to a friend, right, or someone, and you feel that connection, like, oh, they get it. They've been through it too. That sends a message to our nervous system that actually activates the polyvagal nerve, or the vagus nerve, that recognizes that, hey, I see you. I'm being seen. I'm able to be heard. And that feels really good to our nervous system. And that's exactly what therapy is doing, any kind of therapy, right? Whether it's psychotherapy or yoga therapy, or, I mean, anything that there's one person engaging with another person, giving them compassion, giving them an open space, empathy, support, compassion. You're able to see them, and for them to be heard is super powerful. And it engages and relaxes that nervous system, especially with anxiety. Gives that calming presence. So anytime we can normalize something for someone, there's a sense of safety in it. Okay. So the window of tolerance. This is a term that was coined by Dr. Dan Siegel to describe normal brain-body reactions, especially to adversity. So I'm going to talk through it, and then I'll kind of talk through this graphic here because I think it's super helpful. So when we're in our window of tolerance, we're able to utilize strategies to regulate our experiences with any kind of emotion: hurt, pain, anxiety, grief, sadness, anything. So what that means is that window of tolerance is the amount of time that you can experience a certain sensation, certain emotion, certain behavior, really. It means that maybe on your mat, you have some fear or some anxiety or some sadness that comes up. You have, I don't know, a minute until you start to get really dysregulated and you can't handle it anymore. What we do within therapy, and especially in yoga, think about it, yoga is the practice of engaging you more with yourself and allowing you to build more tolerance, really, with the sensations in your body, the emotions in your body. And so when we experience that window, what we're doing is trying to expand it, trying to build more of that level of okayness to experience whatever we have. Now, if we've experienced any kind of adversity through trauma or unmet attachment needs, this drastically shrinks the window of tolerance. We don't have as much within there. And this is what people will experience that have some type of disorder. They have a very small window of tolerance. A lot of times they may not have really any tolerance, and they've just completely shut down. Which is, if you look at the graphic, I hope y'all can see this, that would be hypoarousal. When someone's just totally spaced out, zoned out, like that dissociation factor, they're numb, they're frozen, that's going to be, you've completely shut out. You don't have any tolerance. You have a really small tolerance, and whenever you hit your peak, your edge, you shut off. You're done. Hyperarousal is where you're going to see a lot more of that anxiety, the anxious, angry, out of control, overwhelmed. And that might happen even just like something happens throughout the day and you're set off. You're just triggered and you can't handle whatever it is anymore. You get anxious, you fight, you run away. And what's important to know is these aren't chosen reactions. This is just your body's response. So what we're also learning is to become more aware of this window. What does that window mean for you? And it means something different for each person. So working with someone, working with a practitioner helps you engage and expand your window of tolerance so that you're more able to cope with challenges when they come up. And then it says over here on the side, again, when stress and trauma shrink your window of tolerance, it doesn't take much to throw you off balance. Any questions about that? Okay. So this is also really what I was alluding to with practice of anxiety on the mat and slowing it down. There's only going to be a certain window of tolerance they have before they're not going to be able to sit in that pose any longer, or they're not going to be able to handle that flow any longer because their nervous system is too activated and they're straight into hyperarousal mode. So same concept. I just hadn't named it yet, really.
Actually, I have one question.
Yeah.
Is when you're working, you know, and I know this more from like a trauma context, but I mean, I think it applies to just anxiety. If you're working with like strategies of titration in order to like come to the edge of like a difficult feeling, or to, you know, explore like something that's triggering you, but you know, you kind of move towards it and come back again, move towards it. Is the idea there really with this is that you're trying to expand your window of tolerance so that you're able to sit with it for longer and more deeper periods of time?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what you're doing. You're building that relationship really to how much you can, going in, going out of it, right? Titrating between those two. Yeah, exactly. Good indication. Titration or pendulation is really doing that. And anything that's learned and trauma informed pretty much can be applied to anxiety, because anxiety is also at the core of trauma, right? Fear. So yeah, exactly. Okay, wait, I want to make sure I finish that. Yeah, okay. So yeah, it's about time. We're gonna do a journal prompt right now, and we're gonna break out into breakout sessions and talk about it. And I'll come into each one, and then we can talk about it as a whole. Think of a time when you've experienced symptoms of anxiety. What tools did you use to self-regulate? And reflect on whether or not these tools were useful. Did you learn new tools and techniques today? And how can you incorporate these new tools into your self-regulation toolkit? Okay. Those lunches go by fast. I was like, oh, wow. All right, we're back. Give it just a couple more minutes. And again, we're going to be doing a yoga nidra right now. So however you want to take that, be comfortable. We're going to do, I'm mixing a couple actually from the iRest yoga nidra from Richard Miller. So.
Will the yoga nidra be the only practice part of this afternoon?
I'm sorry, you cut out a second. Will it be what?
Is that the only practice that we're doing this afternoon? Like after that, is it lecture?
Yes. Oh, and again, remember, if you do want to submit a potential case study that we can talk about, you can privately message me, or if you're comfortable just, you know, talking about it in front of the group, we can do that as well. And sorry, we'll do that after the yoga nidra, but you can message me at any point and I'll look in the chat. Okay, well, I think a lot of you are here, so let's go ahead and get started. Get comfortable. And we'll get started in a second. Okay, so in this practice, you're invited to note and experience your breathing as flows of sensation and energy. Sit or lie down in a comfortable position with your eyes gently open or closed. Allow your senses to open to the sounds around you. The touch of air on your skin. The sensations where your body touches the surface that it's resting on. Notice the feeling of letting go into being at rest and at ease throughout your entire body and mind. Bring attention to sensations in your jaw, mouth, eyes, forehead, neck, shoulders, arms, palms, chest, belly, upper and lower back, pelvis, hips, legs, feet, welcome your entire body as a field of radiant sensation, front and back, left and right sides, inside and out. Welcome your entire body as a radiant field of sensation. Bring your attention to your body breathing. Inhaling, abdomen, midsection, and chest rising. Feel your entire body expanding and letting go into the surface that's supporting you. Expanding and letting go. Relaxed, grounded, at ease. And again, bring your attention to your body breathing. Inhaling, abdomen, midsection, and chest rising. Feel your entire body expanding and letting go into the surface that's supporting you. Expanding and letting go. Relaxed, grounded, at ease. Bring attention to your body breathing. Exhaling, abdomen, midsection, and chest releasing. Your body letting go into the surface that's supporting you. Releasing, relaxing, grounded, and at ease. And again, bringing attention to your body breathing. Exhaling, belly, abdomen, and chest releasing. Your body letting go into the surface that's supporting you. releasing, relaxing, grounded, and at ease. With each exhale, sense a gentle flow of sensation and energy moving up the back of your body. Flowing along the back of your legs, back of your spine, back of your neck, and up and out through the top of your head. And continue with each exhale. Sense a gentle flow of sensation and energy moving up the back of your body, flowing along the back of your legs, back of your spine, back of your neck, and up and out through the top of your head. With each exhalation, sense a flow of sensation and energy up the back of your body as your body settles ever more deeply into the surface that's supporting you. With each inhalation, sense a gentle flow of sensation and energy traveling down the front of your body, flowing down through the top of your head, throat, chest, belly, pelvis, legs, and feet. With each inhalation, sense a flow of sensation and energy traveling down the front of your body as your body settles ever more deeply into the surface that's supporting you. Continue with each inhalation. Sense a gentle flow of sensation and energy traveling down the front of your body, flowing down through the top of your head, throat, chest, belly, pelvis, legs, and feet. With each inhalation, sense a flow of sensation and energy traveling down the front of your body as your body settles ever more deeply into the surface that's supporting you. With each inhalation, sense a gentle flow of sensation and energy traveling down the front of your body. And with each exhalation, sense a gentle flow of sensation and energy moving up the back of your body. Continue with each inhale, flowing down the front of your body. Exhale, flowing up the back of your body. Notice this circulating current of sensation and energy. With each inhalation, sensation and energy flowing down the front of your body from head to toes. With each exhalation, sensing and energy flowing up the back of your body from heels to head. Welcome and nourish the feeling of your inner resource of well-being as you continue noticing your body breathing. every cell in your body welcoming the feeling of well-being with each breath. Continue noticing and experiencing the circular flow of sensation and energy with each breath. Notice each breath massaging the front of your body, massaging the back of your body as you inhale and exhale. Continue to notice and experience the circular flow of sensation and energy with each breath. Your body settling, relaxing, grounded, at ease, inviting in your inner resource of well-being, peace, and ease with every breath. Start to welcome the environment and sounds around you. The touch of air on your skin. The sensations where your body touches the surface that's supporting you. Feel into your body breathing itself. Notice the sensations and flow of energy present throughout your body, and start to bring in noticing the thoughts that are present in your mind. Locate a recurring negative thought, one that may be associated with a certain anxiety you have in your life right now. Take one that is not too difficult to deal with. Maybe one is something like, I'm not good enough, I'm powerless, I should have done it differently. Something you've identified in yourself before. Once you've begun to notice this thought, affirm this thought as your only truth and reality. When you take this thought to be true, where and how do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your gut, heart, or throat? Do you feel relaxed or tense, opened or closed down? How do you act or react in your life and relationships when you believe that this thought about yourself is true? Again, what do you feel in your body? Do you feel this in your gut, your heart, or your throat? What do your muscles feel like? What does your heart feel like? What are the sensations and energy that you notice around this thought? Now turn your attention to imagining an opposite thought. For instance, I'm broken becomes I'm whole, I'm powerless becomes I'm capable. I'm not enough becomes I'm okay just as I am. I should have done it differently becomes I did it the best I knew how. Welcome that opposite thought. Invite it in to your body, to your field of sensations and energy. Affirm this opposite thought as your only truth and reality. When you take this opposite thought to be true, where and how do you feel it in your body? Do you feel it in your gut, your heart, your throat? Do you feel relaxed or tense, opened up or closed down? How do you react when you believe that this opposite thought is true? Take a few moments and write down how you feel when you take this thought to be true. Think about how you feel when you take this thought to be true. Notice what it feels like in your body. What are the sensations and field of energy that you notice when you affirm this opposite thought as truth and reality? How can you acknowledge this thought just a little bit deeper as it settles into your field of sensation, settles to be true within you? Now, experience both opposites at the same time. First, affirm and experience in your body your negative thought. Then, experience in your body the opposite. First one, then the other, and take your time. Go back and forth, affirming each opposite thought while also experiencing how and where each impacts your body. A hint here, don't affirm your beliefs with only your thinking mind. Your task is to feel and experience both thoughts at the same time, along with the effects that they have on your body. Don't try to merge opposites into one another. Experience both opposites at the same time and allow whatever happens to happen. Holding opposites of thoughts at the same time is a creative moment that takes you beyond either opposite into a world of new and infinite possibilities. What does it feel like in your body to hold both thoughts and sensations? Can you hold space for both? Can you bring compassion for both thoughts and sensations? Continue to bring awareness to both of the opposites. Start to bring your attention back to your breath, back to the sensations and energy within your body. Notice this circulating current of sensation and energy. With each inhalation, sensation and energy flowing down the front of your body from head to toe. With each exhalation, sensation and energy flowing up the back of your body from heels to head. Continue moving down the front of your body and back up. Release any sensation or emotion that is not serving you. Exhale that sensation and flowing energy from your body. Inhale new, invigorating, and cooling energy with each inhalation. Exhale whatever energy and thoughts do not serve you. And inhale the energy, thoughts, sensation that do serve you. And continue here. Exhaling and inhaling. Welcome and nourish the feeling of your inner resource of well-being as you continue noticing your body breathing. Every cell in your body welcoming the feeling of well-being with each breath. Continue noting and experiencing this circular flow of sensation and energy with each breath. Your body settling, relaxing, grounded, at ease, inviting in your inner resource of well-being, peace, and ease with every breath. Remaining here as long as you feel comfortable. When you're ready, allow your eyes to slowly open and close several times. Sense the surface that's supporting your body, the feeling of the environment around you, sounds, objects, the sensation of your body, emotions, thoughts, and the feeling of well-being. As you're ready, with your eyes open, feel yourself present to this moment, aware of your body breathing, your inner resource, and sensations of well-being, peace, and ease as you come fully back to your wide awake state of mind and body, present to this moment. Whenever y'all are ready, slowly come back to the room. All right, how was that for people? Any thoughts? Want to share? As we're all coming back to you. So what I did there was take two different eye rest practices. I took the noticing flows of sensation and energy and the opposites of thought. So I started with the noticing of flows and sensation of energy. That way, really starting to regulate and connect with the body and the breath. Because, well, a couple of reasons is one, really become more as present as possible. And And two, before going into any maybe difficult sensation or thought, I want to make sure that we ground and become a little bit more safe within our bodies and ourselves. So we have a base to where we can help support ourselves into going into any kind of difficult work. And that some people may not say that's difficult, just depends on the type of thought and what you brought up as the opposite, as the basis for the opposite. But that's why I started with flows of sensation and energy to get us a little bit more into our body. And then going into the opposite of thought, we can work there a little bit with that. And it's similar to what we talked about with, well, actually, I can't remember who brought it up, bringing up the titration, right? And going in between back and forth and get us more oriented with the opposite thought that can serve us better. So I actually learned this not in IREST or Yoga Nidra, but through a therapist that I had, and recognizing that when we can hold both thoughts, that can be valid, because there are, that core belief, that negative core belief that we have about ourselves might actually, we can't just make it go away, right? So how do we work with it? And part of that is acknowledging that it is a part of us, because it is. We're working not to get our full self, not to acknowledge it as our self, and that just is what it is, but to recognize that it's a part of us. And when we can hold that part of us in this hand, and we can hold the other part of us in this hand, that is, we are whole, we are whatever the opposite of your thought is, we can hold both, we can acknowledge that they're both okay. We might want to lean more into this one and say, okay, I want to really hone in and grab onto that and let that other opposite thought really sink into my body, my nervous system, so that I can recognize that that's more true. That can be more true for me. But in the beginning, we have to work with both, because they're both present. The negative one might be a little bit more, but we want to acknowledge that they're both there. Anytime there is something that we're working with or dealing with, we can't just dismiss it and go to the opposite straight away. It doesn't really work. Again, you can't just shut it off. So we have to bring them both to the surface and work with them both. Any questions about that, or noticings that anyone had? Actually, let me ask this. Did anyone have difficulty with that, like recognizing both at the same time, or even going back and forth?
There's a question in the chat.
Oh, I can look at that. Thank you. How many times do you cycle through the body awareness? Someone told me you're supposed to do 3 rounds of body awareness. Is that true? Oh, okay. So I'm assuming, Paula, are you meaning the sensing body awareness? Like the starting with sensing inhale and exhale, sensing of flow and energy? I'm guessing that's what you mean, starting off with that?
Well, yeah, when we have a yoga studio here in my building, and one of the instructors was under the understanding that when you're doing the body awareness, you're supposed to run through the full awareness cycle 3 times. And I'm just not sure, because in all the scripts I've read and that I've been reading, it doesn't cycle through it 3 times. It just brings your awareness, to the front, to the back, to the left, and to the right. And she said you're supposed to go through that a full 3 times each time. And that didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So I just wanted some clarity.
Yeah, I haven't heard that rule of 3 times. I don't think it's a bad thing at all. So actually the script that I read only goes through it once. But if you noticed, I repeated the inhale a couple times. I repeated the exhale a couple times. I basically just kind of modified this. I stuck with the script, but I would just go over it again, because I think that is really important. Sometimes just going through once isn't fully we may not get settled in, especially if we have a really strong anxious mind. We need it to be repeated multiple times. So I haven't heard that it's a rule to do that, but I definitely don't think it's a bad idea. I think it could be a great idea depending on the person.
Okay. Now, would you like repeat it like an example, you know, okay, like going down to your right thumb, right thumb, right thumb, or would you actually do like 3 cycles separately? Like, you know, like I've been working a little bit with some clients that I have with a little bit of nidra and more relaxation meditation. So I've been introducing the nidra to them and they're very interested in it. I just want to make sure I have the complete understanding and I'm not doing, I know you can't really do it incorrectly, but wanting to make sure I'm doing it as correctly as possible.
Yeah. So you're right. I don't know if there's necessarily a wrong way. Because some people might think that you keep repeating right thumb, right thumb, right thumb might be a little bit annoying or activating. So I would probably err on the side of flowing through a cycle and then doing it again, like repeating the whole hand or noting the whole hand and then repeating the whole hand again. But again, I don't really think there's a wrong way. I guess what I'm saying is I don't see any clinical implications or anything that would really strongly activate a person unless they had some trauma with whatever you're leading them through. But if they're individual, you would probably know that.
Great, thanks. And then just on one other quick note too, speaking of trauma and triggers and activations, would you give a little bit of like a warning, not a warning, but a little bit of advice prior to doing a session that it may cause triggers? And if, you know, they're having any issues or anything to, you know, leave or whatever they feel they have to do?
Yes. Although I would not use the wording of this may cause triggers. And the reason for that is because I would stay very general, saying if you notice any difficult sensations or emotions that are coming up that are painful to deal with, please note that you can come out of it. You can note, you know, raise your hand, do something, whatever. Keep it general, because if you say like this, there might be some things that are triggering. Someone might be kind of like on hyper aware of it. Like, oh, let me watch out for all these things, and might lean into something and grab onto it.
Makes total sense. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Okay, I think that was only one in the chat. Although Carrie said, sometimes I experience what I feel like are heart palpitations occasionally during nidra. In this practice, I did close to the end of practice when I really started to feel more relaxed. And then I have these uncomfortable jolting or rhythmic type of sensations that bring me out of it. Is this A, normal, and B, something I can figure out how to cope with or learn how to avoid? Do you practice, notice that, oh, you said occasionally during nidra, okay. It's interesting. If it's coming, let me ask, is it coming from a, like you feel a jolt of energy, or do you feel your heart racing? Either one of those?
It's not like heart racing. Like it's honestly like, I remember in college, it was like the first time I started experiencing this, and I actually went to the doctor a couple of times, and they ran EKGs, and I was like, I don't think you're going to see anything, because it's like once every couple of months I'll experience this, and it kind of just feels like my heart isn't beating appropriately, or like it's squeezing, and lots of times it makes me cough. But I've noticed that sometimes when I'm in yoga nidra, like once I really start to relax into it, it'll happen then.
It's almost like when your body's relaxing, something's telling you to like, wait, hold on, don't go full into that. Is it only a nidra?
I haven't had it happen in any other yoga practice. Like usually when it happens, like I'm usually doing something pretty passive, or I'm in more of a relaxed state. Like I've never had that happen while I'm teaching a class or taking a class. I've never happened while I'm at the gym or doing anything active.
What about during sleep or waking up or going to sleep?
I haven't had it happen like while I'm really lying in bed, like trying to go to sleep or right after I've woken up. Like it's most times that I can recall, it's like the most active I've been, it's just been like I've been walking, but not walking like with a brisk pace or anything. Like I'm just going from one room to another, or like
Okay.
I'm sitting like in a situation like this, or I'm just like passively studying.
The only thing, and I'm not completely sure, but the only thing that came to mind for me would be almost like a rise in cortisol level, like a rise in cortisol being like jolt. Because the reason I say that is I've actually experienced that before. I had irregular cortisol levels, and I would literally, like in the morning, wake up with a jolt of this, just like, whoa, energy, like shaky a little bit. So so that's the only thing that kind of came to mind for me. But there has to be, it's almost like it's activated when you're relaxed. That's what seems to be.
And that does kind of make sense, because I felt like in the practice today, it kind of took me a while to like get into it, where usually I fall into yoga nidra a lot faster. And just as I started feeling relaxed and I was like, yes, I'm getting into like yoga nidra vibe, then like I felt that and I was like, shit, like now I'm awake and my eyes are open, because I feel like my heart's gonna explode.
I would watch also are there any thoughts or emotions that come with that? Because that could tell you something as well.
Right.
It's interesting though. I haven't heard of that happening when more in a relaxed state. But if you look at it from a psychological perspective, there's something there that your body isn't used to. It's not wanting you to go into. So it's activating it.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. Okay. Anyone else? Okay.
Grace, this is Eva.
Hi, Eva.
I was waiting. I found it really interesting to do the holding of both, right? Because when I'm holding the negative thought, I literally, like, I feel like I'm choking. I can't breathe. I'm then while I'm looking for the opposite of that thought in my body, you know, it's actually a sensation that comes from the same exact place. It's from my throat, right? This, I can breathe. It's the exact opposite. I can breathe. So I'm like trying to not breathe and breathe at the same time. And I love the idea that, both these things are in me already, right? Worthiness and unworthiness, safety and the sensation of not being safe. And, you know, all those things are already there. And, you know, when I do feel that constriction in my throat, whether it's I'm not safe, I'm not worthy, which is also I'm not safe, all of those things, the opposite is already there if I just allow myself to kind of drop into that space, right? Like, can that also be true, or maybe truer, right, than the I'm not safe feeling, right? So that I found really interesting. And then eventually, as we were going through that freak out, you know, I can't breathe feeling, in the thought I'm not enough or I'm not safe or whatever, started to like, I can breathe. Maybe I'm not breathing as freely as normal, but I'm breathing. So even when I was trying to focus on the thought of the negative thought, it eventually lessened, right? The sensation lessened, which I found interesting. And I've done some things like this before, but overlapping two in that moment, on top of each other and trying to feel both at the same time was like, that's different for me. And then it just sort of like went from pendulum, and exactly how it's supposed to, right? And there I am in the middle, and now I have these little tiny pendulum swings instead of this, like, I'm suffocating and I'm on life support, you know, or whatever.
Yes.
Okay. Anyway, that's all I wanted to say. I thought it was pretty cool.
No, thank you for sharing, because you're right. That's what we're going towards, is like trying to narrow that down and hold both, but recognize that there doesn't have to be such extreme opposites, right?
Right.
So even just starting out, even if you introduce this to someone and not even go straight into the yoga nidra, I would do literally just a sensing, noticing meditation, or really visualization of like, how do you just holding both in your body without going too far into like going back and forth, just basically holding. And then bringing in that compassion, that felt sense of well-being within your body as you hold both, so that there's a sense of safety when you have both of them there. That's the whole idea, is like bring us, like you said, bring us back to safety, bring us back to a sense of okayness when they're there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks, Eva.
Thanks.
All right. Anyone else want to share or questions about the nidra? Okay. All right. So I'm going to start up the PowerPoint again, and we have just a couple slides, and then we're going to go into a case study, which well, you know what? I'm going to switch that, because the one that they're going over, Carrie, if you're open to it, you said you had to leave at 2, right? Is that right, Carrie? I think she's frozen. Okay.
Me? No, I'm good the whole time.
No, sorry, not you, Tara. Carrie.
Oh, Carrie. I'm like, sorry, guys.
That's okay. We are going to use her case study, but she actually might have already left. So, okay. We can go ahead and you save that for tomorrow and do a different one. So,
Oh,
all right.
sorry everyone. I just lost connection, but yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Okay. So do you mind if I share Carrie then?
Yeah, that's great. Thank you.
Cool. Okay. So I'm gonna, would you like to go ahead and express it maybe?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, cool.
So I have a new coworker, and he has definitely a lot of anxiety, and he has a tendency to attach onto new people. I think particularly women pretty quickly, and like women that are nice to him, because he is coming from a bit of trauma. He was married for 7 years, and his ex-wife, or soon to be ex-wife, he's in the process of getting divorced, is diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, with some elements of narcissism. And she attempted to commit suicide, and he came in on her, overdosed on like an entire bottle of pills. And then shortly after she was hospitalized and recovered from that, she cheated on him with another woman. So he's coming from quite a bit of trauma. And I had sent in the chat part of a text that I actually received from him earlier this morning, which I lost our whole thread when I lost connection, but I can paraphrase what he said to me. So he said, "Hey, I'm having a hard morning, like shaking right now. I need to get out of the house for a bit." So I had just responded. I was like, yeah, like it sounds like you need to do something to kind of break your tension and release some of your anxiety. And he said, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, "Yeah, I have some errands that I need to run today so I can distract myself." And then he was saying how he needed to print something out, which is actually a document that he needs for his divorce. And he was looking for printer ink and he couldn't find any, but what he did end up finding was a bunch of like old love letters that were written from his wife, his wedding ring that he thought that he had lost, and some old photos. So that's really triggering. And then he said, it's just really rough seeing the love that used to be there, that was so long ago and now isn't. So that's my case for everyone.
So thanks, Carrie. We're going to take this as him being a client, not his ex-wife, right? And so we're going to, because that can be a whole other thing, we're going to take this as what is anxiety? What is he experiencing right now? I'm also going to note a little bit of that. I think you kind of touched on it, like it attaches quickly. So I will address that a little bit because I think that's something to note, especially if he's a new coworker and he's expressing all of this to you.
Yeah.
I would be a little bit cautious of boundaries, I guess is how I will say it.
Yeah. And he has actually brought up to me, he's like, I need to work on my personal boundaries. I share too much. I actually met him at a job at a behavioral health hospital that I was doing some PRN work at. And initially he was even sharing too much with the patients. But now that he's kind of realized like, oh, I'm violating boundaries, I should not be sharing personal information with patients. I think he's now using the outlet of his coworkers and he's shifting that to, well, I can't talk about this with my patients. I don't have that many friends because I've been absorbed in dealing with my wife for the last 7 years. So my coworkers are the only people that I have.
So I would definitely note that anxiety is it's seeing itself or portraying itself as outwardly, right? External anxiety, like getting it out, because there's some definitely unease going on within him internally. So what I would definitely start with is putting the focus back on him. Say this is a client coming to us and we want to give him certain practices to bring himself back to him, back to his internal state of being, so he can start to regulate his own sensations and emotions that are happening. So that anxiety that's within him, he's grabbing on to others so that he can feel better. He's expressing them outwardly. He needs that connection. He needs that validation from someone else. Actually, this goes great into our next slides with polyvagal theory. So thank you.
Yeah.
So, all right. So we're assuming that maybe he doesn't have a whole lot of practices in yoga. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah, no.
No, okay.
Yeah.
So really starting with some awareness of body. Like, let's just start there. Plain and simple, understanding certain movements within your body. What do you feel the sense in your body when you really want to reach out and start to talk to someone? What do you feel then? Can you grow that window of tolerance a little bit more so that you're recognizing what is within you, and how can you sit with that for a little bit longer?
Okay.
I would also talk about or recognize, starting with breath, any of the breath works that we did today, or we've even talked about today and didn't do, but people brought up, boxed breathing, anything with Langana, cooling breath, Nadi Shodhana, any type of alternate nostril breathing to really help him cool down. And I would even start with that, like definitely in the morning and evening. And because there are things that are going to be happening with his life that are going to be triggering, like finding something, right, that's happening, I would talk about recognizing what happens in that scenario. So like kind of emergency situations, if you will. What happens when we get really highly triggered at that moment? What does he automatically want to go and do? It sounds like, I mean, we know he wants to go and express it and talk to someone, which I will say, like, is not a bad thing, right? Like, we need people to trust and talk through things with, of course. But to recognize when it's appropriate and when it's not is probably going to be helpful for him. If we're really looking at it through the scope of yoga and what we can help with him, is really helping him become calm and more present in his body. Any kind of grounding meditations, recognizing how that affects his stress response. Right now, he's probably really highly in that stress response. And actually, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to talk through these slides and apply this to the slides, because I think I would do this anyway as I'm talking through it. So let's do that, because this is perfect. Okay, can y'all see the stress response slide right now? Is it shown?
Not yet.
No? Okay, where is it? Let's see. Oh. Okay, here we go. All right, so the stress response, like we talked about, it's the fight, flight, or freeze. And a lot of times these responses are outdated. So what's happening with him right now, he's probably in, we could say maybe fight or flight, depending on how he's reacting towards his future ex. But he's in a state where he's just not able to regulate himself. We have to acknowledge that this is both psychological and biological, because what's happening within the mind, and especially how he's attaching to others, that can be a very psychological start because of the attachment and, like you said, the unmet attachment needs, but also that biological response, because obviously, like, he's having sensations come up, and we need to help him release and relax that stress. The whole idea is that when there is this overactive stress response that is repetitive, that's what leads to anxiety. And this is kind of already what we talked about, but I'll go to the next slide. So this it's called the feel good scale. Some of you were in my psychology of yoga course, so we went through this, but I took a training from a woman called Isabel Tierney a couple of years ago that talks about the stress response and spirituality. And so this is a really awesome visual to understand the stress response and also how to get ourselves in and out of it. So the top of the pyramid is where the stress response is, where we're going to experience things like anxiety, disconnection, reactivity, irritability, anger, sadness. Also to note, in that red zone, so we call it the red zone, the top of the triangle. In that red zone, there's going to be any kind of physiological response as well. There's going to be the beliefs that happen, the physiological response, the emotional responses, and the mental responses. The reason why it's number one at the top is because number one means the least amount of life force energy flowing through us, least amount of prana. When we don't have that prana flowing in a balanced way, we're going to be in that like reactivity mode, stress response mode. So level numbers like 1, 2, and 3, it's a scale to help you check in with yourself. So I would even introduce this to him and say, okay, let's start to check in with yourself a few times a day. Where are you on the scale? If you're in the red zone, we'll stop, breathe, and engage in some type of relaxation response, which I'll go into in a minute. The yellow zone is going to be pretty much in between relaxation and stress, probably where a lot of people are on kind of a day-to-day basis. They may not be totally open, peaceful, in a aligned way with themselves, but they also may not be totally reactive or anxious or disconnected at all. The green zone is at the bottom because it is the most grounded, present state of being. You're in alignment. You're experiencing peace and love and joy. You're experiencing all actually emotions. It's not just this feel-good state where we want to be happy and healthy all the time, because that's not normal life. Life has its ups and downs. But the idea in this green zone space is that when you're in it, you can experience all emotions, all sensations in a open, flowing, non-attached way. You can be that observer in this space and experience anxiety. You can experience anger. You can experience distress, but you can do it in a way that doesn't totally take a hold of you and lean you out of complete alignment with yourself. And the reason why it's 10 at the bottom is because there is the most amount of prana, life force, energy flowing through you so that you're able to do this. You're able to flow with whatever comes up in life. In relationships, this is going to look like being non-judgmental, being open, being curious with someone, being able to have a conversation where there's a give and take. When you're stressed, when you're in a stress response in a relationship or in a conversation, you're probably not very present. You may not be very open to understanding. You might even be pretty internal to where you just can't give much attention to the other person. But in the green zone, there's going to be more ability to connect with someone else. So again, in that yellow zone is pretty much in between. And I really would say probably a lot of people just live within that yellow zone state of being. So when we're in that stress response, and what I would talk with him about is recognizing, I usually say, like, when you're below really like a 6 or below, and you recognize that within yourself, that's when you recognize, you stop whatever's happening, you know that you do not engage or make decisions from that place. Meaning you don't engage with other people in a way that may not be the best for you or for them. You're aware that you just may not be making the best decisions for you or for anyone else. And so know basically not to act from that place when you're in it, not act from that stress response. Start to bring some breath into your body, because again, when we're in that stress response, we're tight, constricted, there's no air flowing, there's no prana flowing. So I would first start acknowledging, engaging into a breath practice whenever he notices himself going down or being below a 6. So 6 or anywhere from 6 to 1. I would say start with a breath practice. Just start with boxed breathing, or really just 10 deep inhales through the nose and exhales through the mouth, like audible exhales, releasing that energy, that heat, expressing it out. And then what this talks about is engaging in what's called she calls it a feel-good habit. And a feel-good habit is anything that brings us closer to peace, love, or joy. So that may be engage in some type of asana practice. That may be engage in some type of meditation, or engage in some type of creativity. When we engage the creative part of our mind, it activates a different part of us that's really not online when we're in the stress response. We're not able to connect to the left and right brain. And so when we engage in something creative, it connects those two parts of our brain. That also might mean, I don't know necessarily for him, but for some people it might mean calling someone and talking to them about it, being external about it, journaling about it, writing it out. And if we're not understanding exactly what's going on, it's literally writing about the sensations or the emotions or whatever is there, whatever is up within us or whatever's happening. It can look like, we usually want to have a few different things on hand, meaning like a few different tools and tasks, things that are internal and things that are external. Internal, again, would be some type of meditation, journaling, listening to music, engaging the senses. External would be talking with someone else, maybe literally getting outside of the space that you're in. And sometimes we don't always have this time to be able to do it, right? Maybe you're in the middle of a work day or something, and you don't have time to like sit and meditate for 30 minutes or go for a jog or walk or something. And that's why we need different like tools in our tools kit. So I usually have people like write out a column for peace, column for love, and column for joy. What are the practices that are going to get you to those states of being? So with a meditation, it might be peace. It might feel more like, how do we get that felt sense within our body? How do we access our inner resource? Peace can look like visualizing a really calming, soothing place that we know helps us feel that felt sense of peace. Maybe it's bringing some sort of sound meditation, like music, to ourselves, engaging in that peaceful energy. A yoga practice, generally, I would say, people say would bring them some peace, or something along those lines. Love, that can be doing some type of maybe gratitude practice, as well as that can also be meaning talking with someone else, right? Someone that we trust and we love and we can connect with. We know that they're open, they're available, they won't judge. We always need to make sure that whenever we go to someone to express how we feel or needing help in any way, we know that they're able to be trusted. I think it's Brene Brown who talks about we can't always, being vulnerable with someone doesn't mean, or being vulnerable doesn't mean that we're vulnerable with everyone, because that's not going to be safe. We have to choose certain people that are safe for us to be vulnerable with. So that's also something to note with accessing a place of love. And we want to be able to do that for ourselves, as well as access it from someone else, or get that love from someone else as well. Treating ourselves in a loving way, giving ourselves love, doing something we know we enjoy, which I guess would bring us to joy, is doing something fun, engaging in laughter, right? Like bringing some energy to the body. Joy is a little bit more energetic. Joy could mean doing a faster paced asana practice. It could be dancing, it could be engaging in some type of practice that engages our physical body as well as our mental mind, bringing more energy and sometimes more heat to the body, right? If we are, and heat not necessarily is always a negative, something, it's not always negative that we need to get out of our body. Sometimes we want to engage in some heat and some energy to our body so that we can get into more of a joyful state. Or maybe we need it to get out of a disconnected, shut off state. We need a little bit more energy flowing through our body. Yeah. Any questions about that? Or thoughts on the feel good scale? Okay. So this is the stress response. The idea that there's that fight, flight, or freeze. And when we're in that, our body is in a state of holding. It can affect us physically on like any chronic illness or disease. Usually you're in a state of stress response. You're in a fight, flight, or freeze. A lot of times it's freeze with chronic illness. Your body's stuck, it's frozen. Or any kind of chronic pain, which is illness, but any chronic muscle or skeletal pain, you're in some sort of state of freeze. Okay, so I know that Michelle went over a little bit over the polyvagal theory in the last one. I'm gonna break it down to literally like 3 simple general steps. We don't need to know all the ins and outs of it, but to understand the whole idea is that he took it to he took the stress response, to a more elevated level. He kind of like broke it down and understood that there's more nuance and more detail within the stress response, that it's not just like this activated stress, fight, flight, or freeze, and relaxation. It's not just those 2 states. There's more to it than that. And so that's basically what polyvagal theory is. So polyvagal theory is the idea that we have multiple states of stress. So multiple states of nervous system activities. So I like this visual because it shows it as a ladder, and you'll hear some people talk about the vagal nerve ladder, where at the top there's the ventral vagal, which is really the icon, I guess, of the polyvagal theory, the ventral vagal social activation. So this is where, when we're in this state, you can kind of think of it, I mean, I know it might be kind of difficult, or it's a little opposite, but if you kind of switch the ventral vagal to the relaxation response, if you switch this ladder, the ventral vagal is going to be more of the relaxation response, but he's talking about this in much more of just a purely social way. This is when we're able to connect and relate to other people. You're present with another person. You're able to connect with them and have access to joy, playfulness, love. We're present with ourselves and others. We can calm ourselves in this place, calm ourselves with someone else as well. And especially in this place, we're able to use someone else. Well, use may not be the right word. It's not in a bad way. We're able to access calm when we're in connection with someone. So we can go to mom or dad when we're young, or as we're older, we can go to the best friend or our partner, and we can express how we feel. We can go to them, we're having a bad day or something's going on, or even a you know, an experience of trauma, we can go to them and talk to them, and that connection that we have between us and them, that our brains literally connect from this vagal nerve, it will soothe us because we have a trusting nature with other people. Our bodies say it's okay to go to someone and feel trusted and open and safe. When you've had an experience of trauma or any kind of adverse experience in life that disrupts that connection, sometimes when we go to someone, we just may not be able to feel that sense of safety, even if they're trying to give that to us. Our brain is like, nope, not going to do that. I'm not gonna feel safe with someone else because I've already been hurt by that. So just gonna shut that off there. So that's the whole idea of the ventral vagal social activation. And also, FYI, the ventral vagal nerve is, if you can see in this picture, starts at the base of the brain and goes all the way down the spine and nervous system. And so that's also why, like I said in the beginning of practice today, we started with the neck extensions and stretches through the neck, because this activates, it releases some of the tension that surrounds the vagal nerve. Okay. I also recognize that I talk fast sometimes, so please let me know if you need me to slow down. I'm working on that. Sympathetic activation is the next state. That's going to be where there's a state of mobilization here, movement, tension, anxiety. This is going to be probably a little bit more anxiety and action oriented. You want to take action here. You're motivated, your main motivation is to dispatch the threat. So you sense a threat coming in and your brain says, nope, gonna move that out of the way, or I'm gonna do something to avoid it, or do something to distract myself so I don't feel this anxiety and this stress, or I don't feel this threat coming in. And that's where the anxiety starts, is I don't want to feel the threat. Okay, well, what can I do to like appease myself and to feel better, to feel safer? I'm going to create more anxiety in my brain and my body so that I can be more action oriented. You're more antsy, you're more stressed out. You get a lot of locked up tension in your muscles in the sympathetic activation state. So really people dealing with a lot of pain in their body, this is where they can be stuck. When we regulate the nervous system through the stress response, this is where we can decrease pain and anxiety. So anytime we've talked about nervous system, calming the nervous system, this is also what we're talking about. We're talking about calming the sympathetic nervous system and accessing what the opposite is, parasympathetic nervous system. So when we're in this, you're not really fully gonna be able to trust that other person and helping you feel safe. It depends. Sometimes you will, especially in a safe and open presence. But you're not going to be in that full open ventral vagal nerve to where you feel pretty safe and trusting with people. When someone is in this for a long period of time, it can end up activating what's down below it, the dorsal vagal shutdown. It's exactly what it's called. It's a shutdown. So if you've ever heard the term in psychology, playing possum, this is what it means. This is the freeze response. You're frozen. Your body is, this is where you can find a lot of chronic illnesses, because you're in a frozen state and your body isn't able to move and heal itself. You're in a place of immobilization. This is also, so the vagal nerve, I should have put a picture of it, it's small, but this is at the back of it. So if you think of it as like kind of two different sections, the ventral vagal is at the front, which is towards the front of your brain, or towards the prefrontal cortex. The ventral vagal, the dorsal shutdown, will be activated at the base, at the back of the vagal nerve. This is related to states also of hypermobility, which is actually something I just learned. So it's shown sometimes that in hypermobility people, they can be in that freeze response to where their body just doesn't have, like, it's technically, you think of frozen, maybe it's just stopped, frozen, controlled, and hypermobility is very like, I mean, your joints are moving all over the place. But when it's, if you think about it, it's actually kind of similar. When there is no openness and movement and strength around, it's just like, it's either all or nothing. Think of that. It's either totally tight, constricted, chronic pain, or it's like your body is so loosey-goosey that it pulls out of place all the time. Also in this, you can experience a lot of lethargy, unmotivated, shame. Shame is a big one. When we experience shame, this is really where we're going to find ourselves, is in the dorsal vagal shutdown. Shame's a really intense emotion to deal with. And shame and guilt are different. So I don't know how familiar y'all are with it, but I'll go ahead and explain it. Shame is something that we have a belief about ourselves that we are wrong or we are bad because something happened or because something we did. Guilt is, oh, I just made a mistake. I messed up. And we can move through it a little bit more quickly. But shame is that really deep, like, I'm wrong. I'm a bad person. I'm not okay. I'm not good enough. Whenever something we've experienced or done. And that's a very different feeling, a very different emotion. We don't have the wherewithal to understand that an experience or a trauma or something we've gone through doesn't mean that we're a horrible person. It's an experience we've gone through, but a lot of times we take that on as meaning we're horrible people. In this dorsal vagal, that's where you're probably going to see a lot of depression, stuck feeling, feelings of incapability. So moving through dorsal vagal, in order to get that back up to ventral vagal, we can't just go from dorsal to ventral. We can't just go sometimes to like red to green zone. We have to move through it, just the same as like if we're in Tama, sometimes we can't always just go straight to Sattva balancing, we have to go through Raja. So many times when we're doing that, when someone's in a shutdown space and they're depressed, when we start to activate the nervous system, we start to activate the vagal nerve, they might move through a really anxious or like outwardly angry state. There might be all of a sudden they're expressing this and that. And that's what happens a lot of times with therapy, whether it's psychotherapy or yoga therapy. Once you start working with someone, you start making movements in the body, they might come out of that shutdown state. They might experience elevated levels of anxiety. And it's not because, doing something wrong or you triggered something. Well, actually, you might have triggered something. You might have triggered their sympathetic response, but that's okay. That's normal to go through. And it may look different for different people. Some people, it may go through a state of anxiety. Again, like it might be more internal too, of just thinking a lot, or it may be outwardly, like lashing out at people, irritability. So it can look differently for different people, but the idea is that you have to move through different states from dorsal to sympathetic to ventral to get to that more calming presence. And that's the same way that you have to move through. Sometimes you have to move through that yellow state to get to the green zone, red to yellow to green. Does this make sense to people? Any questions so far? No.
I think I'm being thrown off a little bit by the social engagement piece. Can't you be in the green without being socially interactive?
Yes, you can. This is just explaining, think of it as the ventral vagal explaining the social component of it. Does that
Got it.
help?
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it doesn't mean that that's the whole picture. It's explaining that this is a big part of it. And so it also goes into attachment theory, which we'll get into, I think, tomorrow. But the same thing is when we've had an experience or trauma with someone, especially a primary caregiver, that trauma or that attachment is not going to feel safe and secure with other people. So the same here. And being in ventral vagal, he's saying that in this space, he's basically explaining attachment theory within the stress response. That's the way I look at it. I don't know if he would say those words, but it helps me understand it that way.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay. Oh, I'll go back. Anything else here? Okay. So, okay, if we were going to look at this from a yoga perspective, working with someone to activate their vagal nerve, we're going to look at things like I did say, like the neck stretches, engaging anything that's lengthening and stretching the sides of the body in there. Twists, not as much. I wouldn't say that's huge, but also anything that is connection, meaning connection to ourselves and accessing that sense of safety, that sense of inner resource. That's going to be super helpful in regards to our vagus nerve and really accessing the stress response or the parasympathetic stress response system, right? Anything that we can do to down regulate our nervous system when it's in such a high regulated state, high energetic state. That's what we want to access. Anything that y'all would, let me think. Anything y'all can think of that would help or that you've helped yourself before, like activating the nervous system or activating the parasympathetic nervous system? You know, that helps you?
Honestly, just the practice of yoga, like the 8 limbs, is what brought me to this this program. It works. It's effective.
Yeah. So can you tell me even a little bit more specific about like what about the 8 limbs? How does that calm you?
Well, so the yamas and the niyamas just take self-care with intention, self-reflection with svadhyaya, and then you know, it's this. I'm not going to go through them all, but just those simple actions: get up, make my bed, and then the physical practice gets prana flowing through the body, and then the pratyahara and the meditation. It just brings me to that inner source. And so then when I get activated, after years of practice, my system is just accustomed to go back to the center, go back to breath. Like I just have an immediate access after years of daily practice. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, for sure. The reason I was asking is just to expand and see, you know, what does it really do for you? And it sounds like it's more internal work. A lot of times when we're brought to this type of work, and the reason why it works for anxiety is because anxiety is external, right? It's out here. Let's bring it back inside, internally. And that's huge of what yoga does, brings us back to ourselves and helps us work to feel more safe within ourselves. And so exactly what you're saying is that's what the 8 limbs does. Anytime that we can access that sense of safety within ourselves, we're calming the anxiety. We're saying that it doesn't have room for anxiety here because I know that I can be safe with me. Yeah. Legs up the wall, Tracy said, yeah, for sure. And that's why I was in practice this morning. Changing up the blood flow of energy within our body accesses a different felt sense within our body, right? It activates the parasympathetic nervous system as well. And yes, singing and chanting, I'm glad you brought that up, Eva, because anything that we can, and we'll go through bees breath and any like Om, right? Om, chanting Om activates that, what am I trying to say? Vibration within our body and our throat. And kind of goes back to the sensory thing, right? Anytime we activate a different sense, we're changing the course of action within our body. We're changing the course of energy within our thoughts in our body. And so anytime we can do that, we can change it up. Or we can shift out of the anxiety. We can shift out of that sense of being that takes us away from who we are and takes us away from our internal self. Being outdoors, sunlight, awakening the senses, yes, for sure. Outdoors is super healing, and it takes us outside of ourselves. So much of anxiety is, even though I said it was out here or up here, it still is pretty internal. When we're in that anxious state, we have our blinders on and that's all we can see. And so we have a one-track mind, and it can also look pretty selfish to other people. Like if you're really super anxious, you may not be engaging with someone else. You may seem rude because you're thinking all the time. You don't know what to say. So it can become super internal and self-focused. So even though I know I said before that we want to become more self-focused, it's different, right? It's not the same as like bringing ourselves back to who we truly are whole as being. So getting outside, seeing that sunlight, being outdoors takes us outside of that thinking mind, literally outside, and like, oh, there's another world around us. It's not just me and my thoughts right now. And that's the same way as getting in a group of people, like going to a yoga class or talking with someone else. You're getting outside of yourself. You're engaging with something different. Listening to healing frequencies, yeah, for sure. There is binaural beats, engages with different frequencies of our brain. And it's actually something we learned or did in grad school, as well as like understanding what different beats regulate what different states of mind, whether it's depression or anxiety. And so any type of frequency or beats that we can listen to over and over, it literally changes the frequency of our mind. So it's super powerful and helpful, especially too with trauma. That can help a lot as well. Just purely listening doesn't have to be anything guided. It's just the beats at a certain frequency. I self-regulate anxiety with breath, extending the exhale to stimulate the vagus nerve and drop into parasympathetic. Yes, for sure. I always access the longer exhales. The first thing I teach anyone is increase your exhales. Breathe out through your mouth, in through your nose, out through your mouth. I actually had, or still have, an issue with getting blood drawn. I pass out a lot. My blood pressure is super low. But I've recognized that when I can calm myself, calm my breath, I can usually put it off for a certain amount of time, or sometimes I don't. It doesn't end up happening where my blood pressure doesn't drop too low, because I can regulate the stress, the anxiety that comes from it. The reason why it used to happen so fast is because I'd be anxious about it happening. I'd be so fearful that my nervous system is so built up and revved up that it lowers my blood pressure. And so if I can access my breath, and literally I'm sitting there just closing my eyes and like deep breathing, expressing that exhale internally, going in with the inhale, I can calm my nervous system and tell my body that I'm okay. And I don't have to go into that state of stress where my body has to go unconscious. So exactly. All right. So anyone else have either themselves or like a case study that they would like to go through? Right now, I'm pretty much finished with slides, and we're open for discussion. I left time here because I wasn't sure how long we'd be. So any thoughts or questions, or even on anything that didn't exactly cover today, but in relation to anxiety? No. Tara, anything you'd like to add to go through if she's here?
No, I'm here. I just couldn't reach my mute button. Everything, I enjoyed today so much, and I'm appreciative for it. I'm looking forward to our next couple of days. That's all I have to add.
Yeah. Okay. Well, okay. I know it's a little bit early. So I guess what I'm going to do is I'm going to stay on if anyone does want to talk through anything that we've discussed today or in general. So I'll stay here and leave the room open. But if not, then I guess you all are free to go. And tomorrow, well, just FYI, tomorrow we will do a practice in the morning, but it's going to be a little bit more of it'll be a slow flow, but it's a little more of an asana flow or vinyasa flow instead of more yin or restorative. So just FYI to prepare. And then we will also do the same format as we did today. And yeah, okay, that's about it. Thank you all so much for being here and listening and participating. Appreciate you.